Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard, episode 155. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an AmLaw 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, Heather Hubbard. Thank you so much for joining me. So my question for you today is, do you want to rise? Whether that is within your company, within your market, within your industry, are you wanting more success? Whether that is a leadership role, some kind of promotion, more clients, more business, more revenue. I'm assuming most of you are shaking your head saying yes. Okay, here's the thing. If that's the case, you really need to be standing out. You really need to be innovating. And what I see over and over again is that so many people, in an attempt to succeed, they emulate and they imitate as opposed to innovate. And emulating and imitating, those can actually get you a pretty good career. They're not going to hold you back at the lowest levels, maybe even the mid-tier levels, because you can have a pretty decent salary, a pretty decent job, pretty good position doing that, right? You often are going to be a little bit of a second fiddle to others, or, you're not really a leader within your industry or having the business that you really want, but you can make good money doing that. And you can have a great reputation and be seen as someone who's doing a great job. And so if you're okay with that, right, then that's a perfectly fine path to take. But if you want to rise to the very top, or at least higher than you probably are now, or if you want to truly be a titan in your industry, or you just want to grow your business even more, you are going to tap out. You're going to plateau if you're simply emulating and imitating. Because those that rise to the very top and continue to grow, they innovate. And that doesn't mean that you have to be an innovative, creative person, right? You might be thinking, I'm not an innovator, Heather. We all are innovators in our own ways. And I'm going to share with you today how to bring that out, how you can start innovating. But before I do that, I want to talk about examples of where I see people getting stuck in this imitation role. I mostly see it in one of four ways. So the first one is templates and forms. I often, because my background is a lawyer, I'm in a lot of lawyer groups, and I see so many people asking for templates and forms. And I get it. If you're just starting out, if you are maybe a solo and you don't have a mentor and, you don't really know where to begin, totally get where having a form book or having templates can at least get you started. That said, if you have been practicing for a while and you have a certain niche, and if you don't, you should have one, you can go back and listen to episode number 7, Riches in the Niche, as to why that is so important. That alone is going to help you grow your business. But if you've been practicing for a while and you ask for a template or a form, what that tells me is you are going outside of your zone of genius and possibly your core competencies. And you just need to refer that out. And here's why. It's holding you back. You are taking on things that you don't need to be doing. You can listen to episode 94 for my 5 biggest mistakes for people going solo. And we talk a little bit about that. And hey, you don't even have to be an attorney. If you have any type of business where you are selling services, right? You can even, quite frankly, be in big law or in, any kind of large firm where you are a service partner. If you are selling services to clients, that episode will help you understand why it's so important not to waste your time and energy on areas that you're not good at or you don't want to really do all the time. Okay. So if you're asking for templates and forms, I want you to stop yourself and say, why am I asking for this? Is it because I'm doing work I shouldn't be doing? And can I refer that out so that possibly I can get referrals in on the matters I really do want? Or is it, I truly am trying to learn? I also see this with coaches and consultants. I often get asked, where do I get my forms from? I used to do one-on-one coaching. I don't anymore. I don't have capacity for that. But a ton of coaches do ask me like, hey, when you were doing this, or even when you're doing your group coaching, like, where do you get your exercises? Where do you get your forms? Where do you get your resources? Where do you get the homework that you give your clients? And I'm like, what in the world are you talking about? And I was never certified as a coach, right? In many ways, I'm an advisor. I'm a strategist because I'm not really trying to pull things out from you and hold space for you so much as like I'm trying to get you to have a transformation, and I will totally tell you exactly what I think. But there are all these coaching schools I have learned out there where you get your certifications and they provide for you all of these forms and all of these templates. And it's, here is what you do and here's what you have your clients do. And I'm just like, what in the world? Here's the thing. That makes perfect sense. If you have no background in giving people advice or in helping people or in coming up with solutions on your own. But most of the coaches and consultants that I work with or that I know or that follow me on social media and are reaching out, they have professional service backgrounds. They are super, super qualified. They know how to use their brains and come up with their own ideas. But because they're starting over, they tend to fall back on, well, I need to use a form. I need to use a template. It was funny. I recently met someone and he was asking me, what I do. And I said, I mostly lead masterminds. I help people, reach really big goals. And he was like, oh, so do you use Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi's stuff? And I'm like, what? And he was like, they have this whole thing where they teach you how to run a mastermind. And I was like, no. And, I'm sure the way that I said it was, I had disgust on my face. And he was like, why the response? And I'm like, well, one, I try really hard to invest not just in men. I try to invest in women and I try to invest in diverse teachers. Doesn't mean that I won't ever work with a man, but like, that's not going to be my go-to. And number two, I don't need them. I don't need them to tell me what to do. I have my own brain. And he said, yeah, but they give you everything. Like they give you exactly like the emails to send out and they give you the swipe files. And by the way, if you don't know what a swipe file is, it's basically like copy, like words that you can use for your email and your website. He was like, and they give you your agendas and your topics. And I was just like, why in the world would I need that? And it raises the question of people who are using that. I question whether they're bringing much value to the table. Like I would not pay for someone who is simply using scripts and forms and templates because like just, you know what I mean? Like just, you can go do that yourself. You really want to be hiring people because they're really good at what they do, not because they can follow a form or a script. And so if you're doing that, here's the thing, no judgment, because I get why you're doing it. You're doing it because you don't feel confident. And you're doing it because you maybe feel as though you can't do it on your own, that you're not good enough. And I'm just here to tell you, you are good enough. That is complete imposter syndrome BS. You have talents and you have intelligence. And when you tap into those two things, you can come up with your own stuff. In fact, there is nothing wrong with templates and forms. Just make sure that you created them and they're based on your brilliance, not someone else's formula. Speaking of formulas, there's no such thing. They are crap. People sell you a formula because you want something to be easy and you want something to have success. And so many business people out there will say, just follow this formula. It worked for me. It will work for you. Well, the reason why it worked for them, there are a million different reasons that go into that. And that doesn't mean you're going to have the same situation or circumstances or that you are the same person as them, right? So if you're buying into formulas, again, I get why you're doing it. You're trying to make it easy. You just want it to work and you don't feel as though you can do it yourself. And you can do it yourself. If you are using sales scripts that you did not come up with on your own, if you are using email scripts that you did not come up with on your own, if you are using any kind of marketing whatsoever that is in a script form where you are just taking it from someone else, and I'm not meaning you're like even stealing, I mean like they might be selling it to you and you take it, you're never going to rise to the very top. It may work to a certain degree, although a lot of them don't, but it may work to a certain degree, but you are always going to cap out because you are a follower, not a leader. You want to be the person, you want to be the Tony, you want to be the Dean, right? You want to be the person who is saying, here's what I did. You want to be that person. You're never going to be that person. You're never going to become that person if you are simply imitating and emulating others. Okay, so that was number 2. I think I started with 1 and then I didn't tell you all. So number 1 was templates and forms. Number 2 is scripts and swipe files. Number 3, where I see this show up, is with like speakers and authors and quotes. If you've been listening to the podcast for a bit or you follow me on social media, you know that I've really invested in and I'm doing a lot of speaker performance training. And one of the rules at the place where I go, like we all have to sign agreements, and I require this in my masterminds as well, is that you don't take other people's stuff. You need to be able to come in a safe place and test out ideas and concepts without others taking your stuff. And, you know, they talk about it because it's actually pretty common. It's pretty rampant in the speaker world where people will hear something and then they take it. This is common with comedians as well. So you hear something and you're like, oh, that's a great analogy, or that was a funny joke, right? And then you just take it as your own. And that's not cool, right? It can be really, really annoying. And this is part of why I even am seeing this. I mean, more and more people are using my language. More and more people are sometimes just straight up using my content. And it sucks. You know, my background is copyright and intellectual property. So, you know, maybe I care more about it than others. Maybe I'm more educated about it than others. But it's becoming more and more of an issue where people are just straight up using my stuff and not giving me attribution, or they're giving me attribution, but it is crossing the line into infringement and they're not getting my permission. That said, there are plenty of people who do reach out and ask how they can use things and how they can do permissions and attributions. And so to the extent that you are ever wanting to quote my stuff, use my stuff, whether it's PDFs or you've been in my programs, before you use it, please do the right thing and reach out and ask for permission and honor my intellectual property. But so this is where this happens, right? So you have speakers and authors and people just start using their language, their examples, even in workshops, right? So again, I come up with all of my own exercises, and then I will hear and see people using exercises that I came up with. And when you are using other people's stuff, not only are you somewhat stealing from them, you might be straight up stealing from them, but you are stealing from yourself. I mean, you are robbing yourself because you are just as good as that person. You are just as good as that speaker. You are just as good as that author. You are just as good as that workshop leader or that coach or that facilitator. And when you're using their stuff and not your own, you're limiting your potential because it's not you. It's not all of you. You have more to bring to the table. And again, this all goes back to the reason we do these things is because we don't think we can do it on our own. We don't think we're good enough. And so I'm just going to keep repeating to you over and over again, you are good enough. You absolutely can create your own content that is going to help communicate to your particular audience, your particular clients in a way that's going to allow you to have explosive growth. So here's a tip. Here's something that I do. When someone tells me, oh, you really remind me of this person, or they say, hey, have you read this book? You would love it. They say exactly like what you say, except they're like a #1 Times bestseller. As soon as they tell me that, as soon as I hear that, I purposefully do not read it. And here's the reason why. It's not because I'm competitive. Well, I mean, I am competitive, but it's not because I'm trying to be competitive with that person. And it's not because I don't want to see that person succeed. I know myself. And I know Well, two things. One is if I start reading their stuff or hearing their stuff, and it is mostly like aligned with what I'm doing and teaching, I fall into the place of, this has already been done. This has already been done. They've already reached the level of success that I want, doing and saying what I'm doing and saying. And so then it makes me feel like, well, then I can't do it either. It deflates me. And so maybe you're not that way, but I am. So it's really important for me to stay in my own lane. And I don't want to read something or hear something that is a version of what I do and say, because I know that it will hold me back. And the second reason I avoid it is because once I see their language, and if it's similar to mine, I then get into my head and think, well, wait a minute, am I stealing their stuff? Well, they already said that, so I can't say it, because now, is that mine? Was that theirs? And it gets really confusing as to, well, what's original and what's not original. And this is where, and again, this probably goes back to my copyright background, and even with like music, and it gets so gray, like with songwriters, and, you know, once you heard something or you were inspired by something, and then the way copyright infringement claims come out. So my theory is it's just best to avoid it, because you can't subconsciously be pulling in what others have already done and said if you're not consuming it. Again, it doesn't mean that I don't want those people to be successful. It's just easier for me to look at them and say, thank you for showing me what's possible. And now I'm going to stay in my lane and run as fast as I can so that I can possibly get there with you one day as well. Because here's the truth, there is enough to go around. And there are almost 8 billion, with a B, people on this earth. And we are all very different people. And we all relate to people differently. We hear things differently. So we need lots of different kinds of people doing and saying the same things in their own way so that we can help as many people as possible, right? So let's say that you are an attorney, or you are a real estate agent, or you are a physician or a coach or a consultant, right? Whatever you're doing, you will skyrocket your success when you fully embrace your own brilliance, your own intellectual property, and your own unique voice and perspective. That's when you really do excel. And so if you are imitating or emulating, you can't ever really break out of the pack because you just look like everybody else. This is also one of the reasons why I think I've shared with many of you, I like to attend conferences and events and like listen to webinars and podcasts in areas that are not mine. They're completely different because I can hear it. I can get new ideas. I can learn new things, but in a way that I would never be tempted to emulate because it's not my space. And so that's a great tip for being able to innovate is you can be inspired, right? There is a complete difference between being inspired by someone and emulating and imitating someone. One of my favorite things to do is to look at something and say, I wonder how that would apply to what I'm doing. And then brainstorming and getting creative and coming up with an exercise or a concept or a strategy related to marketing and sales where I'm doing it in my own way, right? So there's nothing wrong with inspiration. We are all inspired. And in fact, I would suggest that there aren't really too many original ideas out there. It's mostly all been done and said. It's just not been done and said the way that you can do it and say it if you truly lead from an innovative place as opposed to just trying to do what others are doing. So the fourth area where I see this come up is business development. So whether it is branding, whether it is marketing, whether it is sales, you look and see what others are doing and you're like, that's so impressive. Like that looks really good. They're really successful. I should do that. And again, I'm not talking about scripts and swipe files, which I also mentioned earlier with sales and marketing. This is not necessarily like a script. You may simply see what someone else, maybe it's a competitor, maybe it's not a competitor, but you just see them doing something and you're like, Oh, that's so impressive. I should do that too. Well, here's the thing that may not work for you. It may not work for you. And the reason why is what's going to work for you is based on your unique strengths, your unique talents, your unique voice, and your unique brand. And so if what they're doing doesn't actually fit within your stuff, it's not going to translate. Now, if you can be inspired by what they're doing and then you bring your own stuff to the table, that can work. Just be really careful that it is indeed inspiration and not emulation. So let's break this one down a little bit more, because with business development, one thing that can happen is you get this idea of these are the things I should do. These are the things I should do. So in your industry, and every industry is a little bit different, there tend to be, here are the practices, here are the standards, here is what you're expected to do. This is what you should do. And so these are the things that you're going to read in most articles, most blogs. You know, if you ever go to any panels, or there's like mentor meetings and they share, here's what you should do. It's really hard to stand out in a crowded field when you're doing all the shoulds that everybody is also trying to do. Okay. So that is a form of emulating and imitating. And I would encourage you to throw that stuff to the wayside, because it's going to really dilute your brand and make it even harder for you to rise above and be seen as someone different than everyone else. And then the other way that this shows up in business development is you see what has worked for someone else, right? You're like, oh my gosh, they are so successful. I'm just going to try to reverse engineer it, right? And then I'm going to replicate it. And so maybe you go to someone's website and you start to follow the path, right? So like you're going to opt in, and then you opt in and you get their emails, and then you see, are they doing webinars? What's their contact form? What's their applications? You know, you're just trying to like see all the things that they're doing, and then how do they do it? And, you know, it's really just like, I'm just trying to reverse engineer what they're doing. And if you're truly in a learning phase, right, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great way to see what people are doing. But one, you don't ever really know if it's that successful, even if they say it is. And two, you don't know what the real strategy is behind it. So if you then just go try to replicate it and emulate it, again, it may not work. There's that beautiful analogy. And by the way, I did not come up with this. So I'll tell you this. I'm sure you've seen it, but it's the iceberg, right? And so you see the little bit on the top, but you don't see what's on the bottom, which is far bigger than what's on the top. So you're seeing, as you're trying to reverse engineer this, what's at the top. What you don't see is all the stuff going on beneath, which is who is their ideal audience. And you may think it's the same as yours, but it might not be. You really don't know how they're going after people, or the thought process behind why they're doing what they're doing, or what part works and what's not working for them, and where they're trying to change things and leverage things and what they're trying to do. And so if you're unique and you have your own audience and you have your own voice, if you just start emulating and imitating and just trying to reverse engineer, you're never, ever going to succeed. And again, you might have a certain level of success, but a lot of people don't get any success. And then here's what happens. You think you're a failure. You think, well, why is that working for them and not working for me? It's because, one, you don't know if it's actually working for them. But two, even if it is, it's because it's working based on a ton of different factors for them. And as soon as you embrace that you are 100% coming up with your own stuff, that's where you can have your breakthrough moment. So the more you emulate and imitate and don't get the success you want, you start to tell yourself the story that you're not as good as them. You start to compare. And that is a dangerous, dangerous place to be. So you might be saying, well, Heather, that's great and all. You know, maybe you're a creative, innovative person. I'm not. Well, I'm going to tell you what I do. And I don't know if it will work for you or not, but I think it will. The very first thing that I say when I'm trying to do anything, right? Whether it is speaking, whether it is writing, whether it's a social post, whether it's an email, whether it is marketing, whether it is a sales funnel. And if you're not familiar with the sales funnel, we did an episode on this. It was episode 20, and it's called Legal Sales Funnels. But again, it actually applies to anyone and everyone that is trying to sell something. Whether it relates to workbooks, programs, coaching, like literally anything and everything where you would be creating something on your own. The first question that you want to ask yourself is, what am I trying to accomplish? And what's needed to accomplish that? What am I trying to accomplish, and what is needed to accomplish that? For example, if you were doing a really simple, we'll use a lawyer example here. If you're doing like this really simple will, you are not going to have the same marketing or funnel or even onboarding as you would for a super complicated estate, right? So what are you trying to accomplish and what is actually needed? I see so many people overcomplicating simple things because they're not really differentiating what is actually needed for this price point, for this client, for this particular offer. And the second thing that you want to ask yourself is, how can I get this person, this client, this audience, this prospect, how can I get them where I'm trying to get them to go? That was wordy. That was a mouthful. That didn't quite come out right. But you get the point, right? Like, where do you want them to go? What are you wanting them to achieve or accomplish? What's the result? And maybe it is to have a simple will, right? Like, it's very small. Maybe it is something more elaborate. Maybe it's a result you're trying to get that person to achieve. Think about it from their viewpoint, right? So get in their shoes and ask yourself, what do they need? What do they need to get them where they're trying to go and why they've hired me in the first place, or why they're considering hiring me, right? And this is why having an ideal client is really important. It's also why, and I always say this, I have general structure with my masterminds and retreats and things like that, but I build in a ton of flexibility because I want to personalize it for the people in the room. And that means everything is not like, it's not set out in advance, because if I do that, I'm not serving the people in the room based on what they need to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, right? And then the third part of that is, what's your personal touch, brand, and voice? So again, this goes back to you have your own unique talents and strengths and branding and voice. And this is where you really personalize it. You use your intellect, you use your background, you use your perspective to help pull all of this together. And this is where you can start to be able to truly think through the way you would say something, the way you would structure something, the exercises you would use, the forms you would use, the copy you would use. And that's what allows you to start being quoted. It's what allows you to stand out. It's what allows you to start being seen as a leader where people are referring everyone to you, right? They're saying, oh, you've got to go listen to this person. It makes you a thought leader. It makes you a visionary. And that's where you start to dominate. And it's not even dominate. It's where you start to rise within your market, within your company. It's because you have your own thoughts and your own solutions that are customized to your people. If you're always emulating, you're going to cap out. You can only charge so much, because if someone really wants the results of the person who originally came up with it, they're going to go invest in that person, not you. And you don't want the leftovers, right? You want to be that top person, or you want to be up there with that top person where you can charge great rates and have like the best clients. So if you hear nothing else, it's this: believe in yourself. Believe that what you have to say is just as worthy as the people that you are quoting and the people that you are trying to emulate or imitate. Your voice is far more powerful than any swipe copy or company that you're going to hire to do your website or your social media that churns this stuff for people in all kinds of different markets all over the country and all over the globe. Use your own voice. Know what it is. Bring your brilliance to the table. Let go of comparison. Let go of thinking that you're not good enough or that you're not original enough. You are. You are. And if you are really wanting to go after big goals and want help really learning to innovate and not imitate and being pushed out of your comfort zone to help you rise within your company or to grow your business, and you are a successful woman, tomorrow is the deadline to apply for the very last group for the 2020 Mastermind Experience. So get your application in ASAP. If you're listening to this after that deadline of March 11, we are already enrolling for 2021. And we are doing guaranteed pricing So it's guaranteed 2020 pricing for the 2021 year only through the end of the quarter. So you would need to get your application in and be enrolled by the end of March. So that's just in a few weeks to get that. So you just pay a deposit now and then you pay the rest later. So if you were interested at all in that and being able to work with me, it's really the only way to get me in that kind of setting where you're getting my eyeballs on your strategy and you have access to me in that way. Get your application in. Now, if maybe you're not a woman, or maybe you're not at a certain level, or you just, aren't really interested in making that big of a commitment or investment in yourself, I do want to give you the heads up that we are taking our business development workshop on the road this year. And I am so excited about this. I've been doing it in law firms for years. I have been doing it somewhat online in bits and pieces for smaller masterminds. We did a 1-day workshop last year. And we have taken all of it and really put it together in a 1.5 day, because I really think you need that extra time, a 1.5 day workshop where it really is end to end. And I will just go ahead and tell you, it is not a formula. I'm not going to give you a script. I am not going to give you a template and say, just do this, because that is a lie. That does not work. Here's what we will be doing. You're going to have some pre-homework. You got to gather some data. You got to do some work, and you're going to show up prepared. You're going to bring your laptop, and we're going to work through stuff together. This is a small group. Every city is a small group. It is capped, and I'm leading these, and you'll be able to interact and get my feedback and potentially the feedback of others in the room. So we truly are walking through everything that you need so that you know who you're trying to attract, what you're trying to sell them, exactly how you're going to try to do it, how you're going to build those relationships, how you're going to close the deal, how you're going to close the sale. It's literally the end-to-end journey for how that person finds you to how that person hires you and then continues to hire you or refers you. And you will end up with your own formula at the end, but it is totally based on your branding, your strengths, your talents, all of your stuff. So no one's looks the same at the end of the day. But we even dig in to your LinkedIn and your bio and the materials that you do have. So it's not just learning, you are putting it into practice and you walk away knowing exactly what to do. So it's super streamlined. It's super efficient. You can get super focused and stop wasting time and throwing spaghetti at the wall. So if that sounds like something that you are interested in doing and you would like to be in one of those small group workshops, we are doing them. We have right now booked April through August, be in a different city each month. You can go check that out, sign up. No application needed. You just enroll as long as there is availability. And you can find out the details and sign up for that at service-not-sales-workshop.com. service-not-sales-workshop.com. And we will put a link to that in the show notes. And if you're wanting to apply for the mastermind, that is 2020mastermindexperience.com. All right, that's it for today. Go innovate. You can do it. Rise to the top. Your voice, your opinion, your perspective, your unique brilliance is what is needed. For show notes, downloads, and other free resources, and to keep the conversation going, head on over to hustleandflowpodcast.com. See you there.